Hey, good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. ¿Cómo están? The Chicago Cubs just clinched. Anyway, give it up for Chicago. My mom's lifetime experiences. She's complete. So this is I think the fourth in a series of presentations by Dr. Juan de Marcos González. This residency is sponsored by the Office of Multicultural Arts Initiatives. The academic host is the School of Music, and of course the residency itself is housed in the Arts Institute. I want to thank Emily for all of her incredible work on that through the Arts Institute. She's helped with the logistics and doing kind of everything. Johannes Wallman is the faculty of record. He's just been amazing. Susan Cook is the chair of the department with the music department, and also Norma Saldivar is the director of the Arts Institute. So let's give it up for them and those individuals. So in addition to those three units, we also have Afro-American Studies Department is co-sponsoring art history, dance, the LACIS, Latin American Caribbean Iberian Studies, the Haven Center, and the Greater Madison Jazz Consortium representing community membership of the coalition to help build this, the Madison Arts Commission, Hunter State, and the Overture Center for the Arts. Just a couple quick announcements. We have Juan de Marcos' daughter, beautiful daughter, Glyceria Gonzalez Abreu, who's going to be doing a special performance this Sunday night, right? At 5 to 7 at the Emmanuel Lutheran Church. And I think you can find information that on the website and all the information. It's going to be, again, 5 to 7. It's free and open to the public. And she's been working with a team of local musicians. And it will be just a stunning event. So hope to see you on Sunday, October 18th. And finally, just be looking out for some of the flyers. Next week, we'll have Telmari Diaz is coming in directly from Havana. She's the equivalent of the MC Light in the hip hop scene in Cuba. She'll be coming up with a conga player. And she's going to be also headlining our festival. It's called Passing the Mic. We have an intergeneration spoken word and hip hop festival coming up. It's tied to the book festival. But she'll be here next week at 7:30, and she'll be performing and talking about the state of kind of hip hop in Cuba, and also kind of the history. So it should be really exciting. Invite everybody. We hope to have this whole place filled. So without further ado, Dr. Gonzalez. Thank you.
Well, Willie became a politician, right? Is it? Yeah, that's the university. I used to be teaching at the university in Havana for years, and I know how it works. Thank you for coming tonight. Tonight we're going to be approaching, well, I don't have my lady, could you turn on the screen? It's not working, right? Well, tonight we're going to be talking about what we call the Danzon complex and the salon music. We're going to talk about the different styles, the different genres that we have had in our country for years, starting in 1659 with the arrival of the contradanza to our country. I grew up, I think I told you before, that I grew up in a neighborhood of musicians. My daddy used to be a great musician. And when I was a kid, I had the pleasure to meet many of the great Cuban artists of the old times. One of them was the creator of what we call Danzon de Ritmo Nuevo, which was a kind of danzon of the late 40s, middle 40s and late 40s. And the name of the guy was Antonio Arcaño. I used to live at the corner of Oquendo and Salud, downtown in Havana. And Arcaño used to live around the corner, about 100 yards away, Jesús Peregrino, entre Oquendo y Marqués González. Normally, he used to go to our store, local store, really nearby to our house, and with bathroom sandals in order to buy things at the small store that we had. But we had because we had something that's called libreta de racionamiento. He never was able to buy many things. But he used to talk to my daddy, and he was the first one who advised me. He told me once, you have to write a danzon, because danzon is the most complex, the most important style of the Cuban music. So I said yes, but for me in that time, I was about 17 years old, I was a rock and roll player. So I said, well, I'm going to write the Danzon. I did nothing until I understood what the Danzon means for the Cuban culture. Besides Alcaño, who is a legend of the Cuban music, perhaps the most important flute player, 5 key flute players that we have had in our history. Nearby lived also Domingo Corbacho, who was one of the trumpet players in some of the first orquestas típicas performing danzón, the danzón of the beginning of the century. He died about 5-6 years ago, very old, Domingo Corbacho. But besides, during the 90s, I had the chance to bring to my band a couple of guys that were legends, also legends of this kind of music, I mean the salon music in our country. One of them was Orlando Cachaito Lopez. Orlando Cachaito Lopez was the son of Orestes Lopez, who used to be one of the composers for the Alcaño y sus Maravillas Orchestra, and one of the creators of the Danzón de Ritmo Nuevo. Orestes Lopez was a cello player, but besides cello, he used to play violin, double bass, piano, everything really good, really, really good, and was a tremendous composer. And one more member of the family of Orlando Cachaito was Israel Lopez Cachao, who perhaps is the most important bass player we have had in the history of our country in terms of popular music. They all the Cachaos, because they call themselves Cachaos, Los Cachao, they play basically the same style. They play the bass, but at the same time they play percussion on the bass. Normally they use double bass and then they play percussion together with the sound of the bass, and they create a kind of syncopation, a kind of rhythmic cells that are really interesting. So I met all of these guys. So at a certain point of my life, when I decided to turn my eyes to this kind of music, I wrote my first danzón. It was in 1996. I was a danzón dedicated to my wife, Gliceria Abreu, who was present here. And in that time, we used to live, we lived in Habana del Este. Habana del Este is a neighborhood in the eastern part of the Havana, near to the beach. We lived in a small neighborhood that's called Alamar, which is the motherland of the Cuban hip hop at the same time. And I wrote this song for my wife, which is a beautiful song. I would like to perform this song for you. This is 2001 in Japan, Sep Tokyo Arena, 3,000 attendance. It's one of my favorite concerts. So this is the music. Of course, this is a sui generis danzón. It's not following the patterns of the traditional danzón. I remember this concert as today. It was, thank you. It was a great concert, and really we had fun. Really we had fun. It was something special. And unfortunately, some of the guys that are performing in this concert are already gone. Some of them really young. For example, the Gordo. I mean, the fat guy that was playing the trumpet, he died a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, my brother also. And the one that's playing the bongo in this in this song, he also is gone, unfortunately. But there's only one life, and we have to go anyway, a certain point of our lives. Well, I told you that we are going to be talking about the salon music today, and there are different styles, different genres that we do have in the salon music. One of them, or the first of them, is la contradanza. Then we have la danza. They are all similar, but not exactly the same. We are going to explain everything today. We have the habanera, which sometimes the contradanza is called habanera. Basically, the name of the contradanza outside of Cuba is habanera, especially in Europe. And many composers, not only Cuban composers, but also composers from the European culture. And I'm talking about people like Ravel, like Bizet. They wrote habaneras. Iradier from Catalonia, he also wrote habaneras. In Cuba, unfortunately, I don't know for which reason, we didn't appreciate the habanera in the same way that as outside of the country. We are going to talk also about the danzon, which is the Cuban national dance. We are going to talk about the danzonete, which is a special kind of danzon. And then we are going to talk about the cha-cha-cha. At last, we are going to talk about the casino, which is the kind of popular dance that we do have in our country, and it's called salsa cubana here in America, because everything is salsa right now. We used to call this kind of music song, but it's salsa cubana. So this is the music that we are going to approach. The first style is the habanera. And here you can appreciate the different patterns of the habanera. All of these patterns are coming straight from the African music that arrived to our country in different periods of our history. The first pattern is the pattern that we call habanera rhythm, which is this one. The second one is called la clave. It's called la clave. This kind of pattern is used by the bass and many times in the left hand of the piano players. The sound is like this. And at last, we have what we call cinquillo cubano. Cinquillo cubano, Cuban quintuplet, which is a figure very syncopated. For the contradanza, the pattern used is the cinquillo cubano. In the first measure, is played the cinquillo cubano. In the second one, is played 4/8 note straight. So the pattern should be similar to the danzon, and it's like this. And this is the kind of pattern that we use for playing danzon, for playing contradanza. Even in the danza, we use the same pattern. Meanwhile, in the habanera, we use another one, which is very related to the Arara culture in our country. For this kind of music, the pattern should be something like this. Which can also be played like this. And I'm going to tell you a secret. If you have heard what you call here in the proto-jazz in America, something that's called the Big Four. The Big Four is the main pattern for the ragtime. Should be something like this. Now, this is 4/4. if we divide this bar in two, we have something like this. In the first bar should be, and then in the second should be, and what's the pattern of the habanera? So this means that's the same thing. We don't know, and nobody knows. It was a great American musician, Luis Moreau Gottschalk, who brought this kind of pattern to New Orleans. He was original from New Orleans, one of the greatest musicians you have had in the history of America. Unfortunately, he's not very played, actually. I don't know for which reason, but Luis Moreau did a lot. He was the first one that really understood the Cuban music. He really understood the Cuban music back in the 19th century. Meanwhile, for many people that are really famous and very well known, they never understood properly the Cuban music. Perhaps Moreau was able to understand the Cuban music because he was Jewish. And for certain reasons, the Jewish are the best musicians you have in this country. Besides the black guys, of course. And many white guys as well. Especially the rock and roll players. But Jewish are unbelievable. I don't know why. Well, you know, when the Homo sapiens left Africa about 40,000 years ago, here my sister Susan knows much better than me. The first step in the other side was the Near East. And then from there, they went to the Mid East. And then from the Mid East, they spread to Europe and they went to different parts, to Java, to Australia, and to different places. And perhaps the Jewish do have, all these ancient cultures, they do have in certain sense the spirit of Africa alive as well, because they are unbelievable musicians. And Moreau also, he was traveling the whole world. He traveled the whole world. But he grew up near to Congo Square in New Orleans. So he did have this spirit of the Arara culture that arrived to New Orleans a long time ago. So we go with the contradanza. There are three possible ways of arrival of the contradanza to our country. The first one, the contradanza was the countryside dance music of the British people during the 17th century in their country, especially in northern England and in Normandy. From England, this contradanza went to the rest of Europe, especially to Holland and to France. And then, of course, to Spain. Do you remember that there was a relationship between Spain and France in the period? Because I don't know, let's say about 75% of the queens were from the Bourbons family. So there was a relationship between France and Spain. So the contradanza arrived to Spain, and from Spain it came to Cuba. This is one of the probable causes of the arrival of the contradanza to our country. Besides, with the Spanish, basically, this is finally one of the reasons. The second one is that during the 18th century, in 1762, during the 7 Years' War, the British took Havana and took the island, basically Havana, which was the most important city of the country in the period. They were there about 9 months, and they brought, besides a development of the, let's say, commercial relationships between owners and a colony, they brought their contradanza as well, in certain sense. And one more probable cause are the Franco-Haitians that arrived in our country during the period of the Haitian Revolution, you know, from 1791 to 1804, and even later, because up to the 20th century, there were a lot of Haitians arriving to our country. A lot of them. They went there in order to cut cane because they were cheaper than our peasants in certain sense. So these are the two the three main reasons or probable causes of the arrival of la contradanza to our country. Well, in Cuba, the contradanza changed completely his patterns. The normal contradanza was 6/8, which is a time signature like this. This was the contradanza, original contradanza. In Cuba, we changed the contradanza using these African patterns that you can see here. During the process that we have talked before here, that's called the binarization of the ternary rhythms, that happened not only in Cuba, but in all the area of the Caribbean and the coast of Brazil, northern South America, with that process. So, contradanza is a feature dance. And in the way that we used to dance la contradanza in that period, it had a basic step. The basic step of la contradanza is something like this. Do you mind if I take my shoes off? No. Well, I'm getting older and I have pain in my shoes. It's something like this. So it should be 1, 2, 3, heel. 1, 2, 3, heel. This is the basic step of la contradanza. And besides, they did have features that they performed, different couples were performing along the dance. There were 4 main features. There were a lot of features that came from Spain, a lot of them. Figure 8 and blah, 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 a lot. But in Cuba, we simplified everything. And we used basically 4 features, which are called paseo, sostenido, sedazo, and the other one is, paseo, cadena, I forgot it. Paseo, cadena, sostenido, and sedazo. And they performed these features, and they were dancing in couples, normally with a guide that worked as a guide for the dance, explaining the different steps or the different features that the ensemble will be performing. Sometimes there was not a bastonero. Bastonero, that's the name of the guide. And then sometimes there was a couple who was basically the person in charge of explaining the different features that will be performed. Right now, we're going to play one contradanza. You are going to see how it was danced. This contradanza was written by one of the most important Cuban composers of the 20th century. This is a contradanza written in the 20th century by Gonzalo Roy. It's a contradanza which is one of the parts of a famous zarzuela based in a novel by Cirilo Villaverde. And the name of the zarzuela is Cecilia Valdés. It's the history of 2 siblings that fell in love. They didn't know that they were siblings. One was a brown lady, a mulata, like we call in our country. The other guy was a white guy. And they never knew that they were siblings. They fell in love until at the end of the thing. It's a romantic novel. They know who the father of both was. And that was impossible, that love. It's an impossible love. So it's something, it's a great novel that I read when I was about 13 years old. So this is the contradanza of Cecilia Valdés. Oh, no. I remember my daughter playing this in the clarinet. The original part is written for the clarinet in B flat. This feature is the sostenido. Well, as you've seen, the kind of ensemble that was used for performing the contradanza in this video was a small ensemble. This was the kind of ensemble that we did have in our country about the beginning of the 19th century. About the end, let's say about 1810, 1803, this changed, and we start using a bigger ensemble that's called orquesta típica. The orquesta típica is based in the sound of the brass section, a brass section similar to the brass section of the military bands. They used one instrument that I don't know what's the name in English. I think that the name is ophicleide. It's a French instrument. We call it figle in Spanish, figle in French. It's a kind of instrument that's not used anymore. It's like a mix of trombone and a saxophone. The sound is like this, and very similar to a bombardon as well. This is the figle. They use also a couple of clarinets, a couple of violins. Sometimes they use a trombone, sometimes they use a cornet, and they introduced the timbales in the section. Here they are using timbales, but I know that basically about the beginning of the century there were no timbales in the bands. The timbales in the bands started with the orquesta típicas, which normally developed from military bands and were featuring not only white guys but also black guys. There was the first time that there was a mix of races in our country performing in this kind of bands. So right now we are going to play the first ever contradanza written or at least published in our country. This contradanza was written perhaps about the end of the 18th century, and then for the first time was published in 1803. The name is San Pascual Bailón. I don't know how to translate. Should be something like San Pascual the Dancer. I don't know if you have the name Pascual. It looks to be Spanish. I don't know if you do have it, but San Pascual Bailón. This is the first contradanza ever published in our country. The syncopation is extreme, very syncopated, and it does have the normal structure of the contradanza, which is 8 bars of what we call section A that we repeat one more time, A, and then a second section, B, that's repeated again. During the dance, normally they make different figures over every repetition of the sections A and B. So 8 bars, A, one more time, 8 bars, A, and then the change, and 8 bars in the section B, and one more time the section B. They can repeat this several times. So this is San Pascual Bailón. One. Go. Repeat. Back to 8. One more time. It's basically the same thing repeated. This is the contradanza. And also the danza is similar, and also the manera, until the end of the 19th century. Now I would like to play a song, a piece written by Gottschalk. It was written about 1830 something. It's a Cuban piece, but you have to listen to the talent of the guy. During the first part of this contradanza, which is the section A, he plays in the Cuban style, using a lot the Cuban cinquillo. Then, in the second part, he switches to a ragtime, section B. And then, when he comes back to section A, he plays one more time in the Cuban style. But when he comes back to the second part, he plays a ragtime, but he uses, in the left hand of the piano, he uses the clave cubana. So this is Gottschalk and Gottschalk, and then the title is La Gallina. Section B. This is more like proto-jazz and ragtime. Listen to a left hand of the piano now. He was a genius. And it's the same thing one more time. Right now, I would like to play one of my favorite songs. The composer is Jose White, which is probably the most important, one of the most important violin players of the history of our country. He also was a composer. He lived the most of the time in Paris, and he had the support of Gottschalk. Gottschalk went to our country. He tried to study in France, but he couldn't make it. I don't know why, for certain reasons that we don't understand. He went to a conservatory and he was rejected in the conservatory. He wasn't able to be there. But he sent, because he was a close friend of Cervantes, Jose White, Nicolás Espadero, he was able to send some of them to study there in France. So Jose White went to France. He married a French lady. He was living there the most of the time. But during the times of the Cuban Revolution, he used to go to our country in order to perform concerts. He was very, very famous in our country in order to perform concerts to support the 10 Years' War during the period of the 1860s up to the 1870s in our country. This contradanza is basically different. It's much more elaborated, with much more, let's say, influence of the European music. But anyway, he used the patterns of the Cuban music. The first part is like an habanera. It's like one of the patterns I have played you, which is this. Then there's a second part where he used strongly the Cuban cinquillo. And the speed of the tempo of the song is faster. So the title of the song is La Bella Cubana, and is one of my favorite songs. This is written for 2 violins and piano. This is a change. And now it's a minuet. So this is basically the same thing. There's a section A, which is longer than the normal section A of the contradanza. Then there's a section B where they are performing strongly the Cuban cinquillo, which is also longer. This section B is 16 bars, and then there's a final of the section B, and then comes back to the section A. As I told you, the main bands performing this kind of music from the beginning of the 18th century, the 19th century, were the orquestas típicas. The orquestas típicas were the first bands performing in mixed race, with mixed race performers, and at the same time using this kind of music, really strong music, basically for outdoors concerts. I would like to invite my daughters to perform one more style of the Cuban music that we call La Danza. They are going to perform one song that was written by Ignacio Cervantes back in about the middle of the 19th century, and the title of the song is Los Muñecos. So Gliceria González and Laura Lidia González. This is the contradanza of Ignacio Cervantes. But we had contradanza in the past, but contradanza became something intellectual, let's say, for the people of my generation. And in the same way that we wrote danzones, we have written danzones in a contemporary language. We have written contradanzas also in a contemporary language. Of course, we don't follow the rules, which is normal for the contradanza, that you know, that is a repeated section A and a repeated section B, just for dancing. In our case, the contradanzas are a tiny bit more complex, are mixed with jazz elements, and don't follow necessarily the rules of the traditional contradanza. I would like to play one of them because we don't have time for more time. And I would like to play this song that we recorded in 2005 in one album that's called Step Forward. The title of the song is Esperanza. No. It's basically the same rhythm. I recorded this song with an strings section, but let's say 95 of the song was made in my studio, in my house. small house in Havana Electric, as I said. You know, I love the wah wah. I love the sound. With the thread sounds good, right? Is it? And now comes the end. Timba. I cannot play the whole song, because we won't have time. Well, from the contradanza, we had the danza. Danza is basically the same thing than the contradanza, with the same sections, A, B, repeated A, repeated B. The only difference is that the tempo is slower, and that the young guys, you know, contradanza is a very, let's say, aristocratic dance. Meanwhile, danza, in the danza, they try to make it a little bit more straight in order to be near to a couple. You know, in the features, you know, we were talking about 4 main features that they were using during the contradanza. In this kind of music, in the danza, they try to eliminate certain parts. And then during the section B, they try to be embraced as closer as possible, according to the times. You know, according to the times, they were as closer as possible in the section B. Normally, the danza is performed in major and minor modes. When it's made in major mode, only major mode, they try to dance together the most of the time. When the danza was made or was composed in major and minor modes, they dance together during the minor part, and then they make another features during the major part of a song. So this was, let's say, one more step to the danzon, the danza. There's several dances that we use in Cuba. There are several dances written during the 19th century. Some dances were just for dancing, just for couple, performed by smaller ensembles and orquestas típicas. Meanwhile, there are some, let's say, concert music written by, let's say, serious composers like Gatschak, like Ignacio Cervantes, like Saumel. The genius of the danzas in Cuba during the 19th century was Manuel Saumel, who was the first nationalist composer that we did have. And the guy that really proposed, let's say, made a proposition of several genres that we did have, we will have in the future, such as La Guajira, the Danzon, and some parts of the Danzon, the Nuevo Ritmo, Danzon Cantado. He did everything during the 19th century. He was a genius and was a close friend of Luis Moro Gatschak. The third rhythm, or the third danceable music, was the habanera. There's a description about how the habanera was danced. There's a description that the habanera was danced. You know, the Cuban patterns for the music is normally of 2 bars. There's a first bar that we can call strong bar, and we have a less strong bar, the weak bar, in the second part of the song. The pattern of the habanera could be and then this one. And then, right now, you have to remember the big 4 that we were talking before. Big 4 is... So, it's basically the same thing. Habanera was much more famous outside of my country than in the country. For certain reasons that we don't understand. The habanera spread to Europe and came from Cuba to Europe, came from Cuba to different parts of America also, and the pattern of the habanera is the same pattern that you can find in the tango in Argentina, for example. Bang. If you remember la milonga, porque no engraso los ejes, me llaman abandonado. It's basically the same pattern. Some composers, I told you, Ravel, Bizet, Claude Debussy, they wrote music based on the habanera. And they published that music, and this music was very famous. I remember, for example, the habanera Carmen of Bizet, the habanera La Paloma, which is very famous, written by Iradier, one of the composers of this country, Catalonia, in Spain. From the habanera came the danzón. Miguel Failde was the first composer of danzons in our country. And he's called the founding father of the danzón. He said that he found a guy called Louis Simpson in a park in Matanzas, and he saw that they were performing a kind of figure dance where the ladies were using artificial flower breath, and the guys small flags, Spanish flags, and they were dancing, but they didn't have music. They were singing the music just with their voices. So Simpson talked to Failde and told him, would you like to write some music for this? And then Failde got back home, and he wrote in 1879 4 danzons. One of them is called Las Alturas de Simpson. Which is this one. There are two things that I would like to tell you in regards to the danzón. First, the danzón has a structure that we call rondó. Rondó means the same structure as the classical music. It means one section A, then one section B, then comes back to A, in the same way as the contradanza, but then goes back to one more new section called C, and then back to A. This is the normal structure of the danzón, which is the normal danzón. Of course, not all of the composers wrote in this style. And for example, this danzón that you are listening, this version, which was recorded in 1954, is a different version and goes from the section C, goes to section A, and then repeats section C 2 more times. But it is important to know that's a rondó dance. During the first part of the dance, the dancers perform what we call paseo. During the paseo, the guy goes to the lady in order to ask for her permission to have a dance. Then they walk around the hall, and then when the section B starts, then they start dancing. This is the way that the danzón is. When we never repeated the section A, they got back to the paseo section. So right now I would like to invite my wife. Sit down. Now I come to her. Section B.
Just get a flower. Just get a flower.
Now we walk around the corner. I talk to her. No. This is the section C. And this is repeated several times during the whole night. This is the normal danzón. This danzón was performed with an orquesta típica, and it's supposed to be the first danzón written in the history of our country. After these kind of bands, we did have one more ensemble, which is called La Charanga Francesa. The problem is that the sound of the orquesta típica was too loud when they were playing indoors. So the term charanga itself is pejorative in Spanish. Charanga means something shit, something small. And the people of the military in Spain used to call charanga any ensemble, musical ensemble with a small amount of musicians. So, because France is so important in the history of the music, I suppose that the musicians, they invented the word francesa, and they called charanga francesa, which sounds better than charanga. Is that okay? Well, in the other hand, they use different instruments for performing the music. Basically, they use strings, they use a couple of violins, they use sometimes if the money was enough, they did have a viola, a cello, then the key flute, the 5-key flute from France. They did have timbales, they did have a güiro, a double bass, and later the piano. The music of the charanga francesa is very similar, but at the same time different than the music of the orquestas típicas. There's one more thing that they did, the composers of the time, because they did have a dance every week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. They did have to perform. So they didn't have talent enough. It's very difficult to compose 4 songs every week. Only Mozart was able to do it. And then they started using music from different sources in order to create the danzons. And because the danzon is made in sections, in different sections, there's a section A, a section B. They could write an introduction, for example, then write separately a section B using, for example, quoting symphonic music, the Fifth of Beethoven, or the Jupiter of Mozart during the section B. And then in the section C, they quote, for example, the Magic Flute of Mozart. And then they wrote the section A, and because the danzón is rondo, they play section A, section B, section A, section C, section A, and so on. And this was something that happened in our country. I'm going to play to you one of the versions of the Magic Flute from Mozart by Antonio Maria Romeo, who was one of the creators of the charanga francesa style in our country. Romeo is an important musician, not only because he was a genius, he was the first one that performed a piano solo during the danzón. I've heard and I have read that during one recording for the Victor, he was performing with his charanga, and then he played the section A, then he played the section B of one danzón that's called Linda Cubana, then he played the section A again, and then when the time comes to play the section C, he quieted the band, everybody stopped playing, and then he played the piano solo. And this is the original recording of Linda Cubana. Then he kept playing solos in the most of his compositions. So this is the version of the Magic Flute by Antonio Maria Romeo. Sometimes the flute is a little bit flat, right? But remember that they were recording live, no auto-tune, like now, that singers that are not singers can perform. This is live. And there's one more thing, to tune a 5-key flute is really difficult. It's difficult. It's not the same as the symphonic flute. this part of the danzón is called the montuno, which is something that was created or was first written by a great Cuban composer called Jose Ufe. What happened? According to Arcaño, once, Arcaño was in my house, and during the 7th of September, during the party to La Virgen de Regla, and we were talking, I was already performing with Sierra Maestra, playing with Sierra Maestra, and I was interested in the danzón, how the montuno, which comes from the sun, got into the danzón. And he told me that once, Jose Ufe, this gentleman that we're going to present to you later, I'm going to play one of his songs, perhaps the first song with a montuno ever written, the first danzón with montuno ever written. He and one more guy, important composer called Raimundo Valenzuela, they went to Oriente. They went to Santiago de Cuba, and they heard bands playing changüí in Santiago de Cuba. And they said, well, it should be good to add this part of the son, of the changüí, added at one more part of the danzón. And then they started writing danzons with the section A introduction, then the section B, back to section A, section C, which is the second part of the danzón, and then going straight to a part that they call D, which is the montuno. The first song, as I've told you, the first danzón with a montuno by Urfe is called Bombín de Barreto. And there's one more story about the Bombín de Barreto. They say that the orchestra, the Jose Urfe Típica, was supposed to perform in Santiago de Las Vegas, which is a small town in the western part of Havana. And a guy who was the timbale player called Barreto asked him, well, which kind of clothes do you think that I can use for going there? And then Ufe told him, well, they all use a bombín. Bombín is bowler, right? Bowler hat. Bowler hat. That's what they use there. So the guy went to a store, he bought a bowler hat, and then he went there, and it was a countryside city. Nobody was using the bowler hat. And then he wrote this danzón, El Bombín de Barreto, which, I repeat, is the first danzón where they added a montuno, a section D for dancing in the style of the normal son. So here I'm going. So this should be the section B, right? Are you understanding? It's clear, right? This is section B. Back to section A. This is the section D. This is a montuno. Vaya. Well, this is Danzon con montuno. We call it Danzon with the montuno, which was one important step in the development of the Cuban music. There's one more thing that I would like to say that it's going to be nice for my sister, Susan Kepex. The first danzón cantado, I mean the song danzón, was made in Mexico instead of Cuba, for certain reasons that I don't know why. But there was one superstar, a great songwriter from the area of Yucatan called Guti Cárdenas, who was the first one who recorded a danzón in New York. It was in 1928 he recorded this danzón. What he did, because the bolero was in fashion and the danzón was on the top, the music, the favorite danceable music, he tried to mix his bolero, one of his boleros, with the danzón. So in order to fix the structure of the bolero, you know the bolero is straight A-B. So there's a section A and there's a section B. But the danzón has several sections. Normally, if you are going to a traditional danzón, you have to go A, B, A, C, and so on. So what he did, he wrote the section A as an introduction. Then the section B is the first part of the bolero. Then there was one more time the section A in order to follow the rondeau structure of the danzón. Then there's a section C featuring the lead singer as well, but with a small introduction with the string section of the band. With the band, there's an arrangement, and then from this arrangement of the band, which is part of the section C, then the lead singer comes. And then there's a section D, which is the last part of the song, where it's performed song arrangement, and then goes to a kind of montunito, a kind of danceable montunito, and then this is the end of the song. I would like to play this song because I love Guti Cárdenas. I have played his music for a long time. He's an idol in Mexico, and this is the first danzón before Cuba that was sung by a songwriter. Our danzón cantado is different. We don't follow the rules of the rondeau structure of the danzón. In the Cuban danzón cantado that we're going to play one later is straight the section A, then the section B featuring the lead singer, then sometimes a kind of bridge, then section C, one more bridge, and repeat B and C, and then this is the end of a song, and has no montuno at all. So this is Guti Cárdenas performing Quisiera, un great bolero. You hear this is a normal introduction of a danzón featuring the cinquillo cubano and repeating the section A.
Quisiera preguntarle a la distancia si tienes para mí un pensamiento, si mi nombre se envuelve en la fragancia inolvidable y dulce de tu aliento.
Back to A. They are following all the rules, repeating the section A, and then the section B, featuring the lead singer. This is a section C, starting with an introduction of the arrangement with the strings.
dejar el nido.
I think that this is enough. You understood? They follow the rules of the rondo structure of the danzón, and this was the first danzón recorded cantado, the first danzón featuring a songwriter, a lead singer. And then in Cuba, the first one singing this style of music was Barbarito Diez, who I consider is my favorite singer. I can be listening to Barbarito for the hours, and I never get tired. Of course, for you, it's going to be boring because you don't understand the lyrics, but the music is unbelievable, and he is a great singer. He was a great singer. The structure of the Cuban danzón cantado is different. So we do have the introduction, normal introduction, and then go straight to section B and C with a bridge and a small bridge, then repeat section B and C, and then go straight to the coda, straight to the end. So it's different than the respect that for the danzón had the Mexican Guti Cárdenas. So right now we're going to listen Barbarito in my favorite song.
Sin la luz de sus ojos es cruel mi tormento, triste estoy sin su amor que robó mi corazón. Se fue para no volver, se fue sin decirme adiós, muy lejos de mí se fue, matando mi ensueño de amor. Se fue para no volver, se fue sin decirme adiós, muy lejos de mí se fue, matando mi ensueño de amor.
So this is the bridge, and after the bridge, he's going to the same thing. After the bridge, he's going to sing the sections B and C, and they are not respecting the rondo structure of the danzón. This is what's normal in the danzón. Besides the danzón, we did have in our country several different styles. From the danzón came the danzonete. The danzonete basically has the same structure of a danzón in certain sense, but doesn't respect the structure in normal terms, the rondo patterns of the danzón. So there is a long introduction. There's an introduction like the danzón, which is a section A, which is not repeated. Then it goes straight to a section B, which is long. Then a section C, really long, and then start the singing. What's the difference with the danzón cantado? The danzonete has a montuno. This is the only difference. We don't have time to play the danzonete today. It's too much. But we would like to talk about after the danzonete, after the danzón cantado, we have the danzón de nuevo ritmo, which the only difference is that they add a montuno, but the montuno is very syncopated, and they use a kind of harmony which wasn't normal within the patterns of the danzón. The harmony is much more complicated, big chords, 9th, 11th, diminished chords, and then all of them together in this kind of music for the first time during the late 40s. It was the band of Arcaño y sus Maravillas, the most important band performing this kind of music. There's a Danzon, which is famous, which was the first Danzón de Nuevo Ritmo that became really famous. I'm going to play just a small fragment of the Danzón. If you listen to this Danzón has only one section A, which is the introduction, very short, and then goes straight to the montuno, where they are going to be improvising. This is the Danzón Mambo, just one fragment. Section A with the rhythm of Danzón. Straight to montuno. And if you listen, it's a dominant chord montuno. Mambo, 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 mambo. Then from Danzón de Nuevo Ritmo, we had the cha-cha-cha during the 50s. Cha-cha-cha was another style coming straight from Danzón de Nuevo Ritmo, and the name cha-cha-cha comes from the steps of the people dancing in the dance halls. Cha-cha, cha-cha-cha, cha-cha, cha-cha-cha. The rhythm is basically the same as Danzón de Nuevo Ritmo. And then, at the end, after cha-cha-cha and after all of this music of the old times, we had what we call casino. Casino is the contemporary dance, the contemporary Cuban dance. Casino is social dance, but it's associated to any kind of music that you can dance with. You can dance the casino in couples, or you can dance making something that we call ruedas de casino, which is a kind of choreography with several couples dancing all of them. And making really incredible features. I used to dance casino a lot when I was younger. Right now I get tired. My wife still dances really, really good. Now perhaps we're going to dance just a little bit. What do you think? Why not? This is a rueda de casino, which is the last thing that we are going to listen to. This is timba.
En el medio de la calle me dijo siéntate ahí que te voy a dar detalles. Le salió del corazón pedirme que me cuidara, que son muchos malos ojos y que cualquiera para. Nadie sabe nada, nadie sabe nada. Alguien roba. Date lado, que te sabe está callado. Nadie sabe nada, nadie sabe nada. Todo el mundo.
This is more complicated than contradanza, right?
Porque Habana de primera se coló rápidamente. Que no entiendo el porqué de mi sabor elegante y que muchos se disgustan. Que yo no soy cantante, le dije no. Tengo miedo y voy camino a la cima. Lo que viene por ahí me levanta la autoestima. Pero vale tu consejo y le pedí a mi tía que me dijera el camino para seguir la profecía. Nadie sabe nada, nadie sabe nada. Vaya,
Well, thank you very much. There's only one thing that I would like to repeat. On Sunday, at the, I don't know how to pronounce this name, it's Emmanuel, but not like Kent, it's with an I. Emmanuel Lutheran Church, 1021 Spaeth Street, at 5 p.m. There's a free event featuring my daughters. They are going to be performing Afro-Cuban music with a small string ensemble, and also is going to be performing La Charanga a Osaka. Esto está bueno. Así que we hope that you are going to be there, right? Well, it's been a pleasure. For me, it's a pleasure always to be in touch with you. Thank you very much.